Hey, it's Dougie from Valto, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you my number one favorite thing about Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is all about how you can use it to ask simple questions to find documents that you forgot where you've stored. Now, why should you care what I have to say? Now, I'm a Microsoft MVP, which means that I actually have been awarded by Microsoft a certification for the knowledge that I share with the community. In fact, you can see a picture of me here speaking at the Microsoft head office in London all about Copilot earlier this year. Now, what do I mean about finding documents? Now, think of this as a new way of interfacing with documents. It's much quicker, much easier. And actually, this example that I'm going to show you this video of now actually stems from a real life scenario where I wanted to find the PowerPoint that I'd been working on for a specific webinar, and I couldn't remember where I'd stored it. Was it in SharePoint? Was it in Teams? Was it in OneDrive? I'd looked everywhere. I'd spent best parts of an hour trying to dig out this information because I knew it existed somewhere. I just didn't know where. So what I did instead is I went to Copilot and I asked it, where is the PowerPoint that I worked on about a webinar, which was all about storing documents in SharePoint versus Microsoft Teams? The irony is so funny here because at the end of the day, it was all about storing documents and I couldn't remember where the PowerPoint was. So I asked Copilot where this PowerPoint was with a very small description. And you can see here now, it's automatically found this document for me, and the reason why I couldn't find this document anywhere, as in I couldn't find in any of the places I was storing this document, was actually the fact that it was stored inside of my colleague's OneDrive. So if I just go back a little bit in this video, you'll see that the document was actually created and it was stored inside of my colleague's personal OneDrive. Now, of course, Copilot doesn't just have access to everything inside of Microsoft 365. The only reason why Copilot can find this file is because it was shared to me from Jade from her personal OneDrive. Now, this means it's found something that I never would have found because I wasn't thinking that this file was living inside of my colleague's OneDrive. I thought it would be stored in one of my own locations. So it's showing us that Copilot can actually see almost three-dimensionally in the way that we kind of see search in terms of kind of a two-dimensional way of searching for something through a set of folders. It doesn't see it like that. It just automatically knows where everything exists, and just by giving it a brief description of what the file is, or maybe where I thought I saw it, or when I thought I created it or last modified it, it's narrowed that right down, and in fact, it's found that document for me straight away. This also goes to show, though, how potentially there could be security risks, as in data leaking to people that we didn't expect had access. So, this can be one of the problems from a security perspective, rolling out Copilot too soon without properly considering, is data being overshared from SharePoint, from Teams, from OneDrive? Because, say, for example, there was a folder which lived inside of the OneDrive or a team site for the CEO, which was all about everybody's salaries of the company or something like that, or some sensitive project. If they'd accidentally shared that with everybody, but it hadn't been sent out via an email or a Teams message, but people still technically had access the file, they just didn't know they had access to it. Technically, Copilot will know that they have access to that file. And if someone was to type in the question, how much is the CEO's salary, for example, Copilot would go and find that file and retrieve the information for them. Now, obviously, that's an extreme example of data kind of oversharing, but those types of things could potentially exist in your organization. So, as I say, this element of kind of interaction is a new way of interfacing with documents. Originally, we had folder structures, then we had search bars, but again, even search bars, you had to use it in a very specific way, like how you have to use Google or Bing search engines in a very specific way. You have to type in something and it's going to appear inside of the title or a piece of text which is in the body. Whereas actually with Copilot, you could type in something like HR policy holidays, for example, and it might return to you the human resources handbook on annual leave, for example, because it understands the context of the search that you're looking for, not necessarily just the words that you've asked it for. So that's why, for example, I found this file really easily. As I say, Copilot has access to everything you have access to. It can look everywhere in a few seconds, Whereas it might take you, I mean, it took me best parts of an hour to find that document, or I didn't end up finding the document. Copilot found the document, but I spent a lot of time looking for it and asking people. And I just couldn't find it manually, and Copilot found it for me. Um, so I say this was a real life example. Now, another way that we can use Copilot for search inside of our documents is actually inside of SharePoint. So what you'll also have is not only the Copilot interface, which will allow us to access documents via, say, Microsoft Teams and things like that. We can go directly inside of SharePoint, click on the Copilot option, and every single SharePoint site will have its own Copilot available. So, for example, here I can ask it a question, which is a pre-built question from this Copilot that says, how can I use these resources? And what that basically means is it's going to list out all the kind of key things which are on this SharePoint site that I can access and utilize. So you can see here, it's telling me we've got access to things like the document tracker, ISO 9001 information, policies, procedures, all these different things I can do from the SharePoint site. So again, it understands the context of the SharePoint site. We can ask it, though, like we did before, to find specific documents. So if I know on our controlled document site we store all of our policies, I could ask it a question to say, where is the document about data protection? And that's going to help me dig into where the documents live and find maybe the data protection policy. Now it's found in the company handbook section, the data protection policy document, and I can click on a link which is going to take me directly to it. Now we specifically have built out a few sort of landing pages as well for some of the kind of handbooks that we have. So for example, the data protection policy, it found it embedded inside of one of the kind of wiki pages we have in SharePoint, all about sort of data protection. Then by clicking on that page, I can see the full information. Or if I want to see it as a document, I can click on that. And obviously, this is just a dummy document that it opens up. But you can see here how simple that was to use Copilot inside of SharePoint to not only understand the SharePoint site, but also navigate it and find the documents much quicker than it would have taken me to maybe use even the search bar or maybe even the navigation bars or these buttons to drill down into the documents manually. You can use Copilot as a new way, a new level of interface to find those documents. So this helps us discover contents of the SharePoint site as well as the resources that the SharePoint site contains. We can search for individual documents, we can search for folders, and in time, I suspect that we'll also be able to use this to ask more intelligent questions because all the information is stored on the SharePoint site of who created the SharePoint site, who's created the content, when have they last updated the content, how much storage space that SharePoint site is being used. Potentially, people like IT admins might want to use Copilot to ask or interrogate the SharePoint site for, say, for example, let's say this SharePoint site is using up loads of storage space, way more than any other SharePoint site on our SharePoint intranet. And as an IT admin, I'm looking at reducing down the storage space so that we don't have to buy additional SharePoint storage space. I could come to this site, again, hypothetically in the future, potentially, and use Copilot to ask it questions about who is the content owner, who's creating content most frequently, so I can go and find them and talk to them about it, or maybe even ask what files are using the most storage space on this site. Things like that are potential uses that could come down the line further down the line for Copilot. So I say we can ask questions about the SharePoint site to find out more about its contents, and in time we would likely have access to do more additional things and use Copilot to interrogate it more than just finding documents, asking much more specific, useful questions. So, if all of that was of interest to you, I do want to tell you about something that you can get your hands on completely for free. It's funded by Microsoft and it's a Copilot readiness assessment. Now, this is actually delivered by Valto, by our team. As I say, it's a free assessment. It's fully funded by Microsoft, so you won't pay a penny. It roughly retails about 3,000 Great British pounds. As I say, if you were to buy that directly from us, that's how much it would cost. But this is fully funded by Microsoft. It will give you a summary report of all the recommendations and findings, which are broken out into 3 key areas. So the main things that we're considering when we're talking to you about Copilot is security. Now, we've talked about this already in this video, how important it is to make sure your security is properly enabled and documents and information and data is properly secure before you stick any form of AI, Copilot over the top of that particular set of information, because you don't want to overshare information. You don't want to accidentally leak something to people. The other thing we're going to be talking to you about is licensing and making sure you are actually getting the best price possible for your Copilot licenses, but also we'll look at all the other additional licenses that you have and make sure you're getting the best value from them. Do you still need them? Is there a cheaper alternative? And we can provide recommendations around that. Also, general optimization. So, are your team structures set up correctly? Is your SharePoint set up correctly? Are you using data loss prevention policies and labels and sensitivity labels and so much more that you could potentially be using to make sure you're properly optimized to get the most from Copilot? At the end of the day, the Copilot licenses have gone down in price, but they're still not cheap. You still need to maximize the return on investment. And by giving you this free assessment, you will be able to either take those actions yourself, or Valto can provide you a fixed price for us to make sure that all of those actions have been completed for you. As I say, if you're interested in booking this, there's a link there's a contact us link in the description below. Just click on that; it'll take you through to a web page where you can fill out a contact form, and we'll reach out to you to talk about booking in your free Copilot assessment. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel for more Copilot and Microsoft 365 related content. And if you have any questions at all, use the comments feed below. Thank you.